Hey you guys, and welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad you joined me today because we're going to be having a very important discussion about how to know whether you're really walking with God or if you are just in this big old illusion of his imposter, the devil. So I know a lot of people who know me are probably like, what are you even talking about, Michaela? I thought you didn't even believe that the devil existed, that it was just like, that hell was just like a state of mind, all these things. But all of that was before I saw a demon and before God came to save me and before I realized how real this all was and before I realized how serious messing with the spiritual realm is and before I realized what I was doing and welcoming in with new age practices and beliefs and before I realized that God is Jesus and Jesus is God and that Jesus really freaking loves me. And this is so weird for me because I used to be repulsed by Christianity. Like, repulsed. And I still don't know that I would like label myself as anything. I grew up as a Christian, as I've told you guys a couple times, but it didn't I just didn't really know who God was. Like I didn't really know God's true character. I didn't really have good examples of a person that was really walking in Christ, but I knew a whole bunch of Christians who were also just as equally big sinners. So, the two masters thing that the Bible tells us not to do. I have a whole new perspective on sin, and I realized that it's not God telling us through the Bible, don't do these things or God's gonna punish you. It is a warning that if you do these things, you're opening the door to the spiritual realm, to the demonic realm, for things to have fair game and messing with you. So it's just a warning. It's not a control thing. It's not a power thing. It's right here the book says it. If you do this, it's kind of like your parents, you almost want to ask them, well, why not? And they're like, because I said so. It's like a parent thing. You just gotta trust them, except for a lot of people like me don't, and then we go have to find out for ourselves. Yeah. Okay, but today's message really isn't for the people who are just outright screw God and God doesn't exist and I'm just gonna sin. And this message isn't for those people, but for the people like me who have good hearts and good intentions and think that they're really walking with God and seeking truth and freedom and peace and all those things, but who are being led astray by the enemy and by the devil. And I really like this Bible verse, Hosea 4:6. I could be saying that wrong. I'm still new to reading the Bible again, but God says, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And that's the thing, if you haven't read the Bible, I grew up reading it, so I have a background. All the stories are familiar to me, but it's still a light bulb moment every time I hear something now because I'm oh yeah, I'm really feeling what it means now. And so I think that's a big problem. I've lived in Arizona for 2 years, and as soon as I moved here, I started a yoga teacher training, on this pursuit to just heal myself and brighten the light in the world and, spread these teachings that are going to set souls free and connect people with God and spirit and each other. And I really felt like I was on the right path. And I still don't entirely, I don't know, I'm not ready, for instance, I'm not ready to give my testimony yet because I feel I'm still in it. I'm still blindly sinning in a lot of ways that I don't even know. So now I'm in the part where I educate myself and read the Word of God and pray for discernment. And so I'm just analyzing everything in my life. But what I can report to you guys on is the feeling, in retrospect, now that I know the feeling of having God with me, I'm able to look back on when I didn't and know a very clear difference in feeling. So for a while, like I said, I didn't even believe that the devil existed. I thought it was just a state of mind, and I believed that God was the universe. I thought, what's the problem in saying either God or the universe? They're just like one and the same. It's like this collective consciousness that we're all connected into. It's like the universal God consciousness we all have. And so it's like we all have God within us. All these things where it's like you just like awaken to your God consciousness. This is like one of the premises of New Age thought and belief. But it's funny too, because the Bible warns that Satan comes in the name of God. And so, like when he got kicked out of heaven because he thought that he was just as good as God. Like, why can't I be God? And so it's the same thing. Like, we have this massive shift on the planet where everybody thinks that they can awaken to their God consciousness. Not everybody, but like a lot of people think that, and they think like, and I think there's like truth to that, like we get this feeling of God within us via the Holy Spirit, like when it's residing within us. But we are not that powerful as humans to to think that we have these God powers. But the thing is when you believe that and you're following Satan's illusions, you just go down the rabbit hole even further. And next thing you know, like tarot cards, I still have mine, but I literally haven't opened them since I saw that demon a couple weeks ago. I've not touched my tarot cards. I got rid of all my adulterous statues of other deities, all the things. But like with tarot cards, for instance, I thought I was connecting with God and angels, and like you could be, but you could also be contacting dark angels and demonic beings who are giving you insight, because they're in the spiritual the dark heavenly realm too. Like they know things, they know so much, and they have some power to give you these like things that you're asking for and to make it seem like you are like getting blessed by the universe, but it's not that, like kind of like, I'm sure you guys have heard of people that like sell their souls and stuff to become like rich and famous. It's a thing where like they can give you what you want on this earthly plane, but it's fruitless to our souls. And so it's like when you're practicing the law of manifestation and all these things, you're like getting what you want and what you're seeking, and you're not going to God. It's like this very like self-reliant thing of like, I'm the creator of my own experience, and you think you're just totally in charge, which like for one is just an incredibly lonely feeling, very, very lonely, very just overwhelming to like feel like you have all that power and responsibility. But some people, they view it just as like the power part to it, and they don't even realize where they're lacking on a soul level. And so you're getting these things in an earthly way, but then what happens to your soul? It's like the devil gives with one hand and takes with another. And so for me, it's like the more I like felt like I was getting what I wanted, I was also losing more of myself at the same time. So it's like as great as things are becoming, they're also becoming that much more terrible, and I didn't even know because the blinders were kind of on. So without God, I felt like I was always seeking to uncover more truths of the universe, seeking to know more about the future, seeking to just like have more, do more, see more. It was just this like emptiness, this void that I was always seeking to fill by like knowing, learning, like absorbing, doing, experiencing the next thing. There was no peace. And that's why Jesus is called the Prince of Peace, because when you have him and you trust him and you're leaning on him and you're walking with him, you have peace. And so, I've talked about the Adam and Eve story a little bit, like some different perspectives. And like part of me doesn't know if I should like delete these videos that I have uploaded before when other beings were like using my vessel to like relay messages. But now I see that, the serpent giving Eve the apple of wisdom, it's like the wisdom where she's seeing everything. You can't go back from that. Like now I've seen a demon, I can't go back from that. I didn't let God protect me, and I ate the apple, and I see it, and I know it's real now, and it's like it knows that I know, and it's like this whole thing where I like took off my spiritual armor, and like that's it, is like God's trying to protect us. But the human mind, the human self, like we have this curiosity, and Satan knows. It's like the Bible talks about him prowling around, just waiting. Like, he knows what we want. He knows what we're curious about. He knows what we desire. And he's there and ready to, like, perform. He's ready to perform. Like, that's him. Like, he was a musician or performer in the heavenly realm. Like, people were always like, angels, whatever, were like always oohing and eyeing over him. Like, he knows how to put on a show. And so that's the wormhole I was going down of, like, conspiracy theory after conspiracy theory. And I realized it gave me a very, like, pessimistic, untrusting attitude towards everything. And I really thought about that too, like what I want to be absorbing. And even if, like, some of those conspiracy theories are true, they weren't bringing me peace to my spirit. So that's how I would really explain experience without God as well. Like, when you're in Satan's illusions, it's like looking into a beautiful, exhilarating, curious kaleidoscope where you just, like, there's so much to see and explore, and there's just layer upon layer and dimensions and possibilities and realities and revelation after revelation. Like, you think that there's just it's so much, and as soon as you start to focus, as soon as you think it's starting to become clear, it turns again, and next thing you know, you're literally falling down the rabbit hole once again, just alone in the universe, falling until you're seeking, trying to find clarity again, and it's just never ending. It just feels like you're falling and falling and falling. But at the same time, you're, like, looking into this beautiful kaleidoscope, but it's fruitless to the soul. You still have the void of not having God. So without God, there's, like, these extreme highs and lows. It makes me think about, like, I went to a bunch of, like, witchy kind of circles where I didn't even realize we were, like, doing spells. I guess I did, but I didn't think it was, like, a bad thing. Like, I thought we were, in my, like, Christian family, they're so shook. Like, they know, they just have this awareness about, like, what it is you're doing and connecting with when you're doing magic. But I'm like, yeah, but, like, me and all my girlfriends would go with, like, beautiful intentions, and like our hearts were like, yeah, like, this is gonna be good, we're healing, this is good for the world. Father, forgive them, for they do not know. Hosea 4:6, like, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. So we're, like, carving these things into candles and burning it, and, like, it's like these rituals we're doing, we're maybe consulting with, I think that's the difference too, like, dead gods versus the living God. The living God, it's like these dead gods are around and they can give a spurt of, like, power and insight, but it's, like, just more and more death. Whereas the living God, it's, like, more of a consistency. So I say that my experience without God, even though I thought I had God, was, like, highs and lows, because it's like, what, the dead God goes back to the grave or something. I don't know. The dead gods, it's like they give a little spurt of something and then they're gone. Whereas the living God is always there and always willing to be with you. And so a bunch of people in the spiritual communities, like, we always describe being in the cauldron. So when we're in the cauldron, it's like, like the witch pot, we're, like, going through deep, like, growth, where it's like you almost view it as a positive thing. Like, people in these communities, like, we viewed it, I was a part of this, but now, like, in retrospect, I'm having a different perspective, but we viewed it as a positive thing. Like, oh, I'm just growing. It's like the shedding of skin, like, it's a part of my journey. Like, I'm supposed to feel this terrible. No, you're not. Like, yeah, as humans, we face adversity and we go through stuff when we grow through stuff, but, like, I realized that it was just the depths of darkness without God, without Jesus Christ. It's like these other deities aren't consistent. They're not the living God. They're going to leave you, whereas he never will. Another reason I knew I wasn't really walking with the real God is because, there will be peace in your heart when you are. Like, when you're in alignment spiritually with God, with yourself, like, there's peace in your heart. Like, you don't have hate, judgment, contempt, disdain, any of that. And I had that for Christianity. Like, oh my gosh, like, Satan hates the Christians. And it's crazy because I hated Christianity. Like, I was on a royal hunt to debunk Christianity. Like, a Christian would come around and I was just like, oh, like I just felt this like, oh, like they don't know anything about anything. They are so brainwashed. Like these are the things that I thought, guys, and I felt like I really had to do anything. Like I would read about God, I would read about Christianity, I would know what they believed just so I could disprove it. And I would study science and I would study other religions and I would try to find like the connection there and just like a different perspective than the ones that the Christians were teaching. After I saw the demon and after God came and like protected me and had mercy on me and I saw him as real, I gained all this empathy for Christians and I began to understand like why they love God and why they go to God for protection and why they trust his word. And I was like, oh, I had all this hate in my heart that I didn't even realize I had, and now I no longer have that. I was like, this is a sign that I'm on the right track because I no longer feel the disdain that I did before God came for me. And so, yeah, I think that's another huge indicator that you're not really walking with God, is if you have any sort of judgment, like even if you're judging the New Agers, the Hindus, different people of any kind, like if you have that judgment and disdain, then God really hasn't completely filled your heart. You're not entirely walking with him yet. So yeah, a big part of my brand before was soul freedom. And like, I feel like I need to redo my intro. I need to like redo my brand, my website, everything, because I'm realizing like soul freedom, the parallels between freedom and loneliness. You know, I've always talked like I've been a very free soul. Like I'll move, I'll leave, I'll bounce around all the things. And I remember having a talk with a couple of my friends while camping a few months back, and we were talking about it, and I was like, yeah, but freedom is like awesome, but it's also so lonely at the same time, because people always admire my freedom. And I'm like, yeah, but like I'm also really lonely. And so that's kind of what you're doing when you're seeking this soul freedom. It's like, what does that mean? Freedom from God? Because I feel like now in retrospect, that's kind of what I was doing. I was freeing myself from God, but I was lonely. Like humans, we are relational creatures. Like we are created to be social and to relate and to desire God. And so this soul freedom, it's like, I don't know, that doesn't feel, in the long run, it doesn't feel like what's actually nourishing to my soul. But I mean, on the one end, it's like soul freedom can just mean like peace in my soul, like freedom from torment in my soul. So maybe it just means something else than what I thought it did originally, but I'm making a parallel there I'm just really observing the 2 years, because it was about 2 years that I spent, you know, very in the New Age, very into like more witchcraft kind of practices. And I'm paralleling like all the freedom that I had with all the loneliness that I was simultaneously experiencing. And before too, I thought that, I really thought that the Christian God was like the biggest deception on earth. Like when I was opening myself up with all the sin and all the demonic energies, like that's really the belief that was in me, is that Christianity is the world's biggest deception. And I really thought that like humans just projected onto God all these human emotions. I thought it was just like a flaw of the men that like created this patriarchal religion. Like what kind of godly, high transcended being experiences things like anger and jealousy and wrath? And like that is so lowly. Like I remember just thinking that was just like kind of being embarrassed for people that they believed God really experienced those things. But now that I've seen a demon and I understand Satan's like never ending just I see why God has to like put his fist down with these beings. Like you have to demand them out in the name of Jesus, in the name of God, and you like can't be nice and soft. Like it's not all love and light when you're dealing with the demonic forces of this world. Like you can't, it's not all just, oh, like please leave. Like no, you gotta cast them into hell. And that sounds extreme, but like they are trying to steal your soul. You can't be nice to them. Like you can't love them. You know, like that's why God gets mad and jealous over us, is because he knows what he's protecting us from. He knows what's out there in this world and who is waiting to get us at all times. And so we just like literally got to trust that and know that like this anger, this wrath is like for the goodness of the world. It's for the light. It's to protect us, right? And so now I understand, like I said, I just didn't really understand God's character before, and like now he's shown me a lot of stuff. So now that I understand him and I love him, and I'm just like, oh, like you came for me with that anger and casted that demon away. Thank you. You know? It's funny, the process of like falling in love with God, because it's like a butterfly, just like fully, like more beautiful than any like romantic love you could ever experience, because you're just in awe that like somebody can love you and protect you as much as God does. See, this is the feeling, like it's full, like with God, it's like this full feeling, peace. It's like not the chaotic seeking and angst without God. And so I now realize, based on my experiences, that it is all real. I almost feel like that's part of what I wanted to know, was like, I just want to see everything that's real. Like I want to know everything that's out there. And I now know like it's all very real. And so after you know that it's all real and you're done seeking to know if it's all real, then you got to observe, oh, well, how does that all feel? Like, what do I really want? What do I choose? If it's all real and it's all possible and it's all out there and I have the choice to make, what choice do I make? And that's when you just got to observe, like, what is going to be fruitful and nourishing for the eternity of your soul. And so that's why I choose God. And you know, I'm done being lost in the glittery kaleidoscope illusions of Satan, and I'm just, God's love is so much more beautiful than any illusion that Satan could ever create. And I'll choose that peace over the excitement of chaos any day. Though, I mean, it is like, not that the temptation's gonna go away. That's why I said I'm not ready for my testimony yet, because I'm still a sinner. Like, the temptation is still very like real for me. I'm still like, it's a battle for me to like do the right thing. But I feel like it really helps knowing now like what I'm opening myself up to when I do sin, and knowing that I have a Father in heaven who loves me and like just would give me everything I want tenfold if I chose him instead. And so, yeah, this is for a lot of my new agers who like really think that we think that we're following God, and we're not. And so I just hope that you analyze yourself based on what I've said, like the feelings that you'd have with God versus without, and observe, like, is my life chaotic? Am I always seeking? Do I have disdain for any group of people? Like, is there this viciousness in me? Am I always in the cauldron? And be able to observe the fact that if all those things are lining up, then you probably don't have God in your heart. And he's waiting for you. He's waiting to bring you home to him. So, I love you guys, and I just wanted to report on my experiences. And yeah, if you want to comment like what you've been going through, if you've experienced anything similar to this, how you know when you're really walking with God versus when you're not, why it's worth it. Like, I would love to have a discussion. Okay, and until next time, I'll see you guys soon. Bye for now.